Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of The Bones. Welcome back. Today I have had this video requested from my students to go over the bones. So I will go over the skeletal system, but not in as much detail as an osteology class or a very advanced anatomy class. I'm just going to go over the basics to help you learn the bones and some of the bumps on the bones. So today we are going to go over the skeletal system. Hopefully this won't be too long because I know there's a lot and I can go on for hours and hours and hours and hours about the bones. But my students have a test coming up and they have to know the bones. So the first bone we could start with, we'll start with the skull. This is the mandible, where your teeth go into these holes. It's called the dental alveoli. So an adult have teeth. So the teeth in an adult, you have, if you cut the mouth in half, say we just go off the mandible and we cut it in half and just go to one side, right or left, you have 2 incisors, 1 canine, 2 premolars, and 3 molars. So that is your dental formula. So 2, 1, 2, 3. Even though most of you know that from me talking all the time, you do not have wisdom teeth. So you're losing that 3rd molar. It's not as necessary as it used to be. So on the mandible, what you need to know, this is the body of the mandible. This is your mental eminence. So that's how you can sex a mandible. This is the ramus, your condyloid process. So this forms that hinge joint, opens your mouth, and coronoid process. So obviously I'm not doing everything, but the condyloid process of the mandible articulates with the mandibular fossa. So we've got this fossa here. All right, now we do the skull. So the best way to do the skull is to go over it again and again and again and again, making a nice big circle. This skull cap doesn't come off, so I can't do some of the internal bones. I will grab another skull for that. So the first bone is frontal. So it makes up the top of the orbit. So you have the supraorbital margin here, and you have your supraorbital fossa or notch here. So this is the frontal bone. It is made up of the, not made up, but is separated from the rest of the skull by the coronal suture. Next we have parietal bones. So the parietal bones are one on each side. That's separated by sagittal suture and the coronal suture and the lambdoidal suture. So parietal bones are surrounded by sutures. You have one bone on each side. Now we go to the back. This one with a big hole in it is the occipital bone, O for O. This big hole is called the foramen magnum, which means big hole. The occipital bone is separated via the lambdoidal suture in the back. So you have your foramen magnum, and then on each side you have occipital condyles. So the occipital condyles articulate with the C1 and let you shake your head, yes. Yes, master. Under those you have 2 holes, the hypoglossal canals, which we're not going to worry too much about that. You have this occipital protuberance back here, and depending on the robusticity of this will help determine if a skull is male or female. If we go to the side, we have the temporal bone here. So the temporal bone is separated via the squamosal or squamous suture. So on your temporal bone you have a lot of landmarks all over the place. Inside you got all these little holes, and you got all these bumps here. So the temporal bone is very important. So if we go off the temporal bone, you have this piece here. This is the mastoid process. It's like a mountain. Look at that, mountain, mastoid. And then right in front of that you have your external acoustic meatus, which is outside ear hole. Then from that, right in front of that, you have your mandibular fossa, where the mandible articulates. Then you've got this bridge. Can you see the bridge? So this part of the bridge is called the zygomatic process. Now if I follow the zygomatic process around, it takes me to your cheekbones, which are zygomatic bones. So the zygomatic process meets the zygomatic bone. So that part of the zygomatic bone that meets the zygomatic process is called the temporal process. So you have temporal bone, zygomatic process of the temporal bone, zygomatic bone, temporal process of the zygomatic bone. And together this is the zygomatic arch, is what most people call it. So you've got zygomatic bones, which make up your cheeks. Then if we go anterior, we have the maxilla. So the maxilla would be the top of your mouth. Goes up to about the top of your nose. So your maxilla is in two pieces. It's where your teeth are. So you've got the same dental formula, 2, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3. Where the teeth go in is also the dental alveoli. From here, we flip it over. The hard palate, that is the palatine process of the maxilla. Then back here, you've got two little bones back here. Those are called the palatine bones. So you've got palatine bones and a palatine process. That makes up the roof of your mouth. Then if we go inside, so this bone in here is called, you see this little line? This is called the vomer, which makes a lightning bolt if you look at it. So if you think vomer, Voldemort, lightning bolt, Harry Potter, you're going to remember this forever. Okay, so from the vomer, you have these two bones here, which are your nasal bones. Those are going to be easy. Nasal bones. Then up in here, if you look up his nose, you can see the ethmoid bone. Then another bone you can't really see, well you can see it, but you won't be able to. Back behind the eye, that's the sphenoid. And then deep back here in the eye is also the sphenoid. So I'm going to grab those two bones. This is the ethmoid. Looks like a nut. You have the cristagalli, which is the point on the top, and the cribriform plate, which are these little crevices on the side. So these are where the olfactory nerves sit. So ethmoid. Next you have one of my favorites, which is the bat-shaped bone. This is the sphenoid, or sphenoid. So these two sides are what you see behind the orbit. Then these would be the back of your eye. So if we look at our bat, or Mothman, if you look at it this way, these are your greater wings, the big sides. These little horns here would be the lesser wings. This little legs would be the pterygoid process, which makes up this piece on the back of your mouth. That's the sphenoid. Then you have these two little holes right here, and those are your optic canals, where your optic nerve goes to let you see things. Then you have the sella turcica here, where the pituitary gland sits. So again, frontal bone, you guys will want to know the glabella. That also helps you sex the skull. Maxilla, nasal bones, sphenoid, temporal bone, occipital bone, parietal bones, zygomatic bone. So that's the skull. It's not too bad. Obviously we're not doing a lot, we're leaving a lot out, but the gist of the bones, for the purpose of this very introductory to bones, that's all you need to know for bones of the skull. Okay, next we go off of the skull and we leave the skull. So the skull and the torso are your axial skeleton. So from the skull, we go down to the vertebrae. So on your vertebrae, you've got cervical. So think of it like breakfast is 7, lunch at 12, dinner at 5. So you have 7 cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar. So from the cervical, hanging off the cervical by itself, it helps hold your trachea, is your hyoid. I'm not really going to stress, but the first 2 cervical vertebrae are very important. This is your atlas. So this is your C1. And then the C2 is your axis, which has the dens here that lets you shake your head no. No, thank you. I would not like a test. So from your vertebrae, you have these pieces that stick out. You can feel them on your back. These are called the spinous processes. Then you have these pieces that stick out on the sides here. Those are called the transverse process. So the transverse process of thoracic vertebrae would be where the ribs articulate. So guess how many ribs you have on each side if you have 12 thoracic vertebrae? I'm going to Dora the Explorer it. Yes, you have 12 ribs on each side. Alright, next. This hole running down where this lovely piece of metal is the vertebral foramen. So that's where your spinal cord is. Spinal cord runs down through there. So we have cervical. These are your thoracic. They look like giraffes. So your thoracic, Jurassic, giraffe. And then you've got cervical, and then the lumbar would be the lowest or the fattest and the widest because it helps hold up all of our weight. So we've got lumbar vertebrae here, spinous process, transverse process. Then you've got your superior and inferior articulating fasces, which we won't worry about. This part of the vertebrae, where they actually stack up on top of each other, is called the vertebral body, or the body of the vertebrae. So that is what supports you. So the body is where all your weight is. So it's very important. In between that, you have interosseous discs, intervertebral discs. Yeah, I knew I could do it. Intervertebral discs that help prevent friction of the bones wearing together, which would not be good for walking. So below lumbar vertebrae, we have the sacrum, which I call the butt cup. So your sacrum is 4 to 5 fused segments. It depends on the person. So each segment, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So all of these are fused, except that's a partial fusion. You can see there. So with age, these will fuse. Usually by 35, they're completely fused. Sometimes S1, between S1 and S2, doesn't fuse all the way. Next, we have the tailbone or the coccyx here. Last part of this, well, not really, I lied. You've got the sternum. So the manubrium, body, xiphoid process. When you're doing CPR, you feel for the xiphoid process and then go a hand above it. So that's, you're feeling for this little notch here. And it's very common to break this notch or break the sternum. So from the sternum, on each side, we have your ribs. So because I don't have disarticulated ribs, it's harder to show how to side the ribs and all of that. But you have the head of the rib, the neck, and the body of the rib. And you can tell the difference between right and left just based off of this angle where your muscle attaches. Another day. So we'll do arms first. So from the axial skeleton, you have appendicular, which would be your arms and your legs. So if we do the arm first, this is part of your shoulder girdle. So this right here is your clavicle. So this is the clavicle, it makes an S. It's different than a rib, which makes a C. So the clavicle, you have the sternal end that attaches to the sternum, and the acromion end, or acromial end, that attaches to the scapula. I don't have one by itself, so this is what we get. So this is your scapula, this is your shoulder blade. So how you tell the difference between right and left of the scapula, this will sit against the ribs. This little place here is where your arm goes. So this goes to the front, this goes to the side, so anterior, lateral, so this is the left. And landmarks on this, you have your inferior angle. This is called the glenoid fossa, which is where the humerus articulates. You have the acromion process, the coracoid process. This is the spine. Then you have the superior and inferior supraspinous fossa, infraspinous fossa. And then this is where your subscapular fossa, the subscapularis will sit here. So your muscles of the rotator cuff will attach to this bone. And you also have like a medial and lateral border, and a superior spine, or a superior angle. Man, I'm sucking today. Superior angle, inferior angle, medial border, lateral border. Which you don't need to know for my test in this one class, but you will in osteology. Okay, next. So just continuing down the arm, we have your apocalypse spatula. So this is a spatula. It is also scientifically known as a humerus. So for the humerus, you have humeral head. So this is the top. This articulates with the glenoid fossa to let you move your arm. Then you have your greater tubercle, lesser tubercle, inner tubercular groove. So again, muscles of the rotator cuff will attach here to let you help you move your arm. Then we have, you can't really see the neck of the humerus, so for this class it doesn't matter so much. But if you go down, you run into this bumpy area here. This is the deltoid tuberosity, so that's where the deltoid muscle inserts to help you move your arm. So this is the proximal end, this is the distal end. These are the epiphyses, this is the diaphysis. So, based on the epiphyses, this individual is an adult. Well, their arm is. So their arm is fully fused. So diaphysis is the inside, epiphysis or epiphyses would be the outside. And these will grow together as an individual ages. And then you have your nutrient foramen, which doesn't matter for you. So if we look at the anterior side of the humerus, these are your condyles, which you have the trochlea and the capitulum. So the trochlea will attach to the ulna, letting you move your elbow, and the capitulum is where the radius rotates around. Then we have your epicondyles, which are specific for muscle attachment and ligament attachment. Medial epicondyle makes like a hitchhiker's thumb. Lateral epicondyle isn't as big. So how you side this, you have this fossa back here. This is called the olecranon fossa. So this is your elbow. So this is where the ulna goes in to let you move your arm. So this fossa is back. I know I'm skipping stuff, but this isn't as advanced. Again, I repeat. Fossa posterior. This is your hitchhiker thumb. It's towards the middle. This is the head. This is what lets you move your arm. So these are medial. This is posterior. So this is a right humerus. So from the humerus, sorry, these aren't all from the same side. They're not from the same person. So there's just random bones that I grabbed from the lab. This is an ulna. CU for ulna. So this is called the trochlear notch. Trochlear notch attaches to the trochlea. This is called the olecranon process, which goes into the olecranon fossa. Look at that. So it would go like this to let you move your elbow. This is your, you're going to cut somebody, you're going to use this. So the olecranon process will be you cut somebody's face open bone. Then you have, so from the trochlear notch, you have this little spot here. That is where the radius articulates. Let's see, what else you want to know? Down here, it's kind of broken. That's the styloid process. So how you side your ulna. So I'm in an anatomical position, which you probably can't see. My thumbs actually go out to the sides, and my ulna is medial. So right here where the radius attaches is going to go lateral because the radius is on the outside. Radius is rad, it goes towards your thumb. So the ulna is medial. So the ulna sits like this. This is where your humerus sits. So this opening sits anteriorly. So this will sit here, and this is a left. This is your left, that's your left. So from the ulna, beside the ulna, you have the radius, which if you look at it upside down, looks like a horse hoof. This is upside down. So from the radius, I don't need you to know right and lefts. This is the head. This is the radial tuberosity, which is also called the biceps tuberosity. So the biceps brachii will insert right here to help you move your elbow. And then when you move your hands, supination, pronation, this will rotate and help you move your arms. From that, we go to the hand. I must find a hand. I found a hand. Give me a hand. Okay, so this is your hand. It's not a very good hand. It is a good hand. It's a beautiful hand. So this guy, it's got some missing features, but these here are called your carpal bones. I don't expect you to know all the carpal bones for this class, but you have carpal bones, which make up your wrist here. Then you have one layer of metacarpal bones, which make up the top of your hand. And then the remaining bones, so 2 and then 3s, are your phalanges, dancing phalanges. So carpal, metacarpal, phalanges. That's it for the hand. Alright, so we go off to the hips. The hips don't lie. So this is an os coxae, and if you wear it, it's a rabbit mask. Yeah. So this is your pelvis. This is your ischial tuberosity. This is your butt. This is what I'm sitting on right now. This here, it makes a joint called the pubic symphysis. This is the pubic area. So your os coxae is split into 3. You have ischium. I already messed up. Os coxae split into 3. Ischium, ilium, and this is the pubis or the ramus. So depending on what you call it. They all meet at this cup here, which is called the acetabulum. That's where the femur articulates. So this goes lateral. This is posterior. So this is going to help you side this. This is called the iliac crest. You have your anterior and inferior articulating spine. Anterior superior and anterior inferior spines here. So anterior superior iliac spine, anterior inferior iliac spine. And these are muscle attachments. This is the obturator foramen here. We follow down the iliac crest. You've got this is called the greater sciatic notch. So usually commonly this is used in sexing. And then you have the lesser sciatic notch here. If I turn this inside, this is where the sacrum articulates. So the sacrum attaches here, and that makes your pelvis or your pelvic girdle. So how to side this? The greater sciatic notch is posterior. The acetabulum is anterior and lateral. So this is a left. Os coxae. From that, we have das Femur. So the femur is my apocalyptic weapon of choice to bash in heads of zombies. So the femur is considered the largest bone in the body. It's very thick, hard to break. If you break it, you got some skill. If you break your femur, please describe it down below. So from the femur, same as the humerus, you've got the head. You have the fovea capita here, so this is the ligament that helps hold it into the acetabulum. You've got the neck, greater trochanter on the back, lesser trochanter. You have an inner trochanteric line, a gluteal line, and a linea aspera down the back, which you guys don't care as much about because you don't need to know all that. So from this, we go down to the bottom. You've got condyles that meet with the tibia and allow the knee to move. And then you have epicondyles where you have muscular and ligament attachment. So medial epicondyle, lateral epicondyle, medial condyle, lateral condyle. Femur is pretty easy. How to side this? These big notches of the condyles are posterior. The head is medial. The lesser trochanter is also posterior. So this is a right femur. I don't know if this is flipped in the video or not, but I know what I'm doing. So it's where it is on your body. So if this is flipped, I'm sorry, it's going to appear wrong, but trust me, I'm a scientist. Next, we have the tibia. So the tibia makes a T. T for tibia. So the top of the tibia here, you have these condyles that meet with the femoral condyles, and this is what lets you flex your knee. So from that, you have this little nugget here, which is called the tibial tuberosity. So this is where the patellar ligament attaches for your knee. I don't have a patella. I have to look in my box. So the tibial tuberosity is where the patellar ligament attaches. So to go down the tibia, you don't need to know much about it. This is where the fibula attaches. This little nugget here is your medial malleolus. So if you feel the inside of your ankle, this is that inside ball of your ankle that you feel. So this is a left. So this is where my knee would be. This is the inside of my ankle. This is your tibial tuberosity is anterior. This is medial, so that is how you side this. So beside that, this is a tibia. This is a fibula. If you get these wrong, you don't mix them up. That's a pet peeve. Don't mix these up. Tibia, fibula, tibia, fibula. So for the fibula, it is lateral, and it has a lateral malleolus. So that's the outside of your ankle. If you feel that ball on the outside of your ankle, it's the lateral malleolus. Look at that. And then from there, we make the foot. So with your foot, you have tarsal bones. So the heel is a specific bone called the calcaneus. And then on top of that, you have this talus bone here, and that is what the tibia rotates on to let you kick people with your foot. Then you have these other bones, so you have cuneiforms and navicular bones, which we won't go over. So one step up from all those, first layer of the top of the foot, metatarsals. Then from there, all of your toes, you got 2s and 3s. Those are the toe phalanges. Phalanges are the toes. So I would do that with my toes because I have creepy long toes. Toe phalanges, metatarsals, tarsals, metatarsals, phalanges. And then you have, this actually doesn't have, you have little bones that sit down here. Those are sesamoid bones of the foot. They're free floating. I don't have a patella, so yeah, I ain't getting one. But that's a little ball, looks like this. It's a sesamoid bone, it free floats. So that is it for skeletal system. If you have questions, let me know. This is obviously, again, I repeat, not as detailed. Oh shit. Not as detailed as osteology. My camera fell. So, please like, subscribe, and learn some bones. Bye.